So to preface, I would like to state that this story is probably going to read like the plot of a campy 1980s horror movie, and it's going to be very long. However, this entire story is true. If not for being 5 miles from cell reception, and the way the story ends, there would be a police report for verification. I will be changing the names, locations, and some details in order to protect the privacy of the innocent. A buddy of mine and I try to camp twice a month, now that I have a vehicle that can be trusted to get me to some of the more remote areas of our state. We planned a camping trip for this past weekend, the 18th of February 2022 to the 20th of February 2022. We chose a fairly remote location we had been to the previous weekend. The previous weekend, we were the only people we'd seen within 1 mile of our camp spot. Friday night, we get there and set up. This story takes place Saturday night. It's about 9 p.m., so the sun is long gone and the moon hasn't quite risen yet. It's pitch black out, other than what our fire lights up. Suddenly, we hear a man screaming. We listen intently, silently sharing an anxious look. At first, we were hoping it was someone drunk and having a little too much fun, but it quickly becomes obvious this isn't fun party screaming. It isn't even like he's hurt. It sounds full of despair, anger, and anguish. I'm going to take a moment to remind you that it is 9 p.m., pitch black night, in the middle of nowhere woods, 5 miles from the nearest cell phone signal. We hadn't seen anyone in hours. The screaming continues for what felt like hours, but was probably about 5 solid minutes. We had no idea what to make of it, and started feeling extremely paranoid. We gathered up anything remotely close to a weapon and tried to come up with explanations of the screaming while keeping our eyes on the forest around us. After about 15 tense minutes of fear-induced paranoia, I nearly fell out of my seat as I watched a flashlight and lantern slowly enter our camp. I greeted the stranger with a basic, "How's it going?" before he was even lit up by the fire. He responded quickly, but flatly, by asking if we could do him a favor. "That depends on the favor," my buddy and I said in unison, obviously tense, holding our weapons close to us. The stranger proceeded to ask if he could hang out for a second by the fire. Given the 2 of us and 1 of him, plus our myriad of weapons gathered from around the camp to within our arm's reach, we decided to agree and let him hang out. After a short second of awkward silence, I ask him what the hell is going on. He proceeds to tell me and my buddy that he was camping down the trail with his buddy, and that his buddy had snapped and tried to kill him. "Wait, what?" I said before the thought even finished processing in my head. "Is that the screaming we heard earlier?" The man slowly nods, staring blankly into the fire, and begins his story. "We were just hanging out, man. We came up earlier today, and my buddy, he just freaked out. He started screaming and just wouldn't stop. Then, he attacked me. He lunged at me, and I told him to just back off and chill, you know. Well, he kept coming after me, and it started getting pretty violent, and I'm pretty sure he was going to kill me. So I grabbed my car keys, the lights, and ran. I don't know what to do, man. He chased me when I ran, and I don't know what to do. We don't have firearms or anything, but we do have a hatchet." My buddy and I looked at each other for a second, completely astonished. Then, something horrible dawned on me. "Wait, he chased you? Like, he's going our way? Here? Right now?" The man just slowly nods in reply, and right on cue, like some terrible horror movie come to life, we hear screaming from maybe 30 or 40 feet from our camp, down on the main trail. I just want your balance, Gary, I want your balance, Gary, where are you, where, Gary. I'd never in my life heard a man scream like this. I've never heard anything like it in my life. It was a brutal, guttural scream that was shrill to the ears, yet deep in pitch. The sound of someone gone completely mad, and the way he said the stranger's name would switch erratically from long and sing-songy to short, guttural punches of sound. We killed our lights, became silent, and listened. By some miracle, the madman didn't notice our camp and continued walking down the trail, screaming the whole way. We ended up chatting with who we'll call Gary for hours. listening to the screaming getting further and further. Come to find out, they had taken 4.5 to 5 grams of magic mushrooms each, and his buddy, who we'll call Ty, was a co-worker of his and was fined for 3.5 hours, then suddenly snapped. It seemed as though Ty thought he could kill Gary and steal his good trip. We hear the screams get further and further for over 2 hours. By this time, it's 11 p.m. The moon is starting to come out, and it's below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty had no jacket or flashlight, according to Gary. My buddy and I are way too drunk to drive out of camp to get cell service, as it was snowy and icy and required 2 to 3 miles of highway driving after getting off the trail. And Gary was still lightly feeling the effects of weed and mushrooms, so he couldn't drive either. We had to make the decision to let the guy wander, hope he sobered up and could find his way back. And he did. Oh, he did. Right into our camp. We hear yelling after about an hour of no screams, maybe 30 to 50 feet from camp again. Hey, help! Please, help! I'm lost! And we can tell the man's walking from the woods into our camp. We tell Gary to hide just in case and greet the man with me carrying my 12-gauge shotgun and my 40 cal pistol holstered. My buddy carrying his AK-47 style rifle and his 2 9mm Glocks holstered, and with our flashlights on our brightest settings in his face. He was about 6'2" to 6'3" and approximately 300 pounds. We talked to him, decided he was calm enough to walk with, and walked him back to his camp. He seemed really remorseful, said he blacked out and didn't remember anything, and had a falling out with his buddy. We escorted him back to his camp down the trail, returned and told Gary that Ty seemed cool, and if anything else happened to scream and come running, we would come out and help him out. It ended up being a happy ending. We made friends with Gary, and I got his phone number to make sure the next day he got back into town safely, back to his wife and kid, and we're actually planning a camping trip with him soon. But Ty, who wandered screaming like a deranged maniac into the forest, potentially wielding a hatchet to murder your friend, to steal his good trip, or whatever it is your psychosis-filled mind was thinking, for the love of God, let's not meet again. Following story occurred 9 years ago in the summer of 2005. I live in Georgia and went to the University of Georgia. My girlfriend, now wife, lived in Atlanta, about a 65-mile drive from Athens, Georgia. The highway which takes you to Athens from Atlanta is a 2-lane highway called 316. This information is important for the story. It was a Sunday evening, and I had spent the weekend in Atlanta, and was now driving back to Athens. In the summer, there were very few cars on the road on Sunday evening, as many students go home for the summer. I was driving a black BMW SUV, and was just cruising along, listening to some tunes. I literally had seen no cars for miles as I approached one of the traffic lights along 316. The light was red, and I came to a stop alongside an older Mustang. It looked like an 80s 5-liter model, and was black with a rag top. The windows of the Mustang were tinted. I really did not give the car another thought. I just sat there and waited for the light to turn green. The light turned green, and the Mustang suddenly sped off with a squeal of the tires, as if the driver floored the engine from an idle position. The car sped off far in front of me. I was a bit surprised, but just thought, meh, another redneck, who cares? The car sped out of sight and out of my mind. I continued to drive along and am back in chill mode again, when suddenly a car with high beams on appears directly behind me. I thought, what the hell? I quickly realized it was the same Mustang from earlier. The car had been waiting on the side of the highway for me. I looked down to make sure my phone was charging in case I needed it, and it was. Next, the Mustang switches lane and flies up beside me, keeps pace for a few seconds, and then takes off in front of me. The car switches lanes to be in my lane and brakes suddenly, bringing the car to a halt. I swerve into the other lane and speed up. The Mustang speeds up beside me and starts to swerve at me, trying to knock me off the road. It then speeds up again and tries the braking maneuver once again. At this point, I am freaking out. I am a 6'3", 220-pound male who works out religiously. I don't easily get scared. In this situation, size did not matter. I note the license plate on the car and grab my cell phone. But as I do, the car is suddenly beside me again and starts swerving at me. As I jerk my wheel to the side, my phone flies out of my hands into the passenger side door well. The Mustang is then behind me, flashing its brights right on my bumper, speeding up, slowing down, blaring its horn, and swerving side to side. Then suddenly it speeds out of sight and is gone. I collect myself, take a deep breath, and drive the remainder of the 10 minutes to the turnoff that is the road to the town where my house is located. I make a quick decision to drive to the police station located in my town on my way home to file a report. I had the license plate number memorized and had been mentally reciting it over and over again. As I turn off the road to the town where I live, bright lights fill my rearview mirror, and the Mustang is behind me again. It speeds past me and turns down another road and is gone. I arrive at the police station and give them the license plate number. This is a fairly small police station and I believe there is only one officer working. He tells me it is probably somebody mistaking me for someone else. He runs the plate number and tells me the owner of the license plate number is deceased. Holy cow. He states it is probably a stolen license plate. Now completely freaked out, I finish filing the police report and head home. I am at home on the phone with my girlfriend when suddenly someone beats loudly on my garage door several times, followed by a squeal of tires. I never see a car, but I call the cops immediately. The cops come and nothing is ever found. I didn't sleep for several nights, but that was the end of it. So sorry for the long story, but I hope you enjoyed it. So last night, I was at my classmate's house working on a group project we had due tomorrow. I live in an apartment in the town where our university is located. My classmate lives at his parents' house, which is in the foothills just outside of town. In order to get to the house, you have to drive along a relatively secluded and narrow 2-lane road for about 5 to 6 miles. We started working on the project at about 6 p.m., and I ended up hanging around for a while after we had finished our work. So I left his house pretty late at about 11 and started down the road back towards town. I didn't realize how tough it would be to navigate the road at night. There were no street lights and the road was unkept and riddled with potholes. On top of this, I had no cell service, so I had to drive very slowly to make sure I didn't blow out one of my tires since I'd used my spare a couple weeks back. I figure I was about 3 miles from the house when I rounded a tight corner and saw a pickup truck with a camper shell parked diagonally across the road. The manner in which it was parked completely impeded my path, and I couldn't drive around it because there was a gully on both sides of the road. The only way for me to go at this point was backward, where there was a pull-off that I could use to turn my car around. At first, I couldn't see inside the cab, but when I turned on my high beams, I saw that there was a man slouched over in the driver's seat, his head resting against the steering wheel as if he had been knocked out after a bad accident. I immediately sensed something was wrong. The way his car had just coincidentally come to rest in a position that totally blocked the road was a big red flag for me. I had heard stories of people playing dead in the road as a way to lure unsuspecting people out of their cars so they could rob them. I decided screw this and elected to go back to my classmate's house and explain what was going on. I threw the car into reverse and kept my eyes darting back and forth between my rear view and the truck. I looked and saw that I was almost to the pull-off where I could turn around. When I looked back, my heart skipped about 5 beats. The man who had been slouched over in the driver's seat was now walking towards my car at a hurried pace, while a few other men jumped out of the camper shell and started moving towards me as well. I panicked and accelerated backwards into the pull-off, which messed up the undercarriage of my car pretty badly. As I put it into drive, the guy was already at my passenger side door, tugging on the handle, which, thank the Lord, was locked. I only caught a brief glimpse of him, but his face appeared to be scabbed and leathery, definitely a meth head or some sort of drug abuser. I sped away and didn't slow down at all until I reached the house, constantly checking my rear view to see if they were following. Thankfully, they didn't tail me, and when I reached the house, I explained what had happened to my classmate, and we called the cops. I was grateful that my buddy's parents were kind enough to let me stay that night. They didn't find anyone on the road matching the description, but I filed an incident report and they told me they would be on the lookout for similar vehicles and suspicious activity. But holy crap, I'm still so shook up over it. I keep getting the same adrenaline rush I got when I saw the guy charging me whenever I think about it.